I got to know Avi for a few months back, and just for disclosure, I am now a fellow with the American Freedom Alliance. And this is a great organization. They're based down in LA. They are one of the few local conservative think tanks, and they focus on basically preserving and protecting Western civilization. And they do some amazing events. I'm surprised, I have not heard of them before. And what is exciting is they now want to bring some of these events out to our area. And Avi Davis is an incredible man. He is a journalist. He has written he's had things show up in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, USA Today. And some of the speakers he brings to his events are known worldwide. He gets prime ministers, he gets presidents of countries, and they come and talk on such topics like as global governance or the tyranny of the environmental movement. So he is doing some amazing things. So I would like to introduce my friend Avi Davis. Now he is from Australia, so English is his second language. So I would like to introduce him, my friend Avi Davis.
Well, when people ask me about my accent, and when I say that I've been here for 30 years, they look at me surprised, and I tell them, well, you know, my parents and grandparents paid a lot of money for that accent, and I'm not going to give it up too quickly. I'm very happy to be here, and I've been speaking to Tea Party groups all over the United States, and I can tell you that I find in the Tea Party a sense of purpose that is lacking in our political system. And it's a real comment on what is happening in Washington today, where neither the Republicans nor the Democrats really represent the people I see sitting in this room today. And that is a problem across the West. And I'll get into that a little bit further as I proceed. Let me tell you why we founded the American Freedom Alliance back in 2007. At the time, actually, I was running an organization called the Israel Christian Nexus, which was an attempt to build Christian support in California for the state of Israel. And more I realized that Israel's fights and Israel's battle and struggle was really the West's struggle. The state of Israel was really on the front line of the struggle for the maintenance of the West and the preservation of the values of the West. And so we moved, and I shifted. I need a little bit of feedback there, just a little bit. That's great. So we shifted our focus to Western civilization. But what is Western civilization? Western civilization is composed of nation states who promote the sanctity of human life, who promote freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, the protection of life, the promotion of liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these are very fundamental. The liberation of the individual, the liberation of the individual, the elevation of individuality is the great success of Western civilization. Now, Western civilization, of course, gained its momentum, I would say, in the late 18th century, when we saw two revolutions which affected world history. Of course, the American Revolution, but the French Revolution. And France became the center of the idea of the preservation of individual rights. And I want to talk a little bit about France because I've been speaking about it all day on television and radio and various places in the media. And before the attack today, you should know that the French police have for years ceded control of heavily populated Muslim neighborhoods to Muslims. There are places in Paris where police will not go. They are essentially run by Muslims. The police who approached the two gunmen as they exited the building where they committed their massacre did not have guns. They did not have guns. One of them, I believe, was shot dead and had no gun. France aligns itself regularly against the United States and against the State of Israel. France has the least participation in religious life of any other country in the Western world. And these things are extremely important to note because, as I've said before, France stands or stood at one time as the pinnacle of the achievement of Western civilization. So what has happened? What has happened to the West and to the consciousness of the West? And that's one of the things that we address at the West at the American Freedom Alliance. So we're going to show you a video about the American Freedom Alliance at the end of my presentation. But there are 5 areas that we address. One of them is the external threat that we all face. It doesn't matter where you live in the West today. I come from Australia, and my brother lives in Sydney. And just last month, the Australians woke up to find out they have a Muslim problem, a very serious one. England, France, Germany, Canada, South America, almost everywhere you look, you see the Muslim menace, the Muslim presence threatening Western governments. So that's the external threat that we face. But we've been weakened because we have internal threats as well. And what are the internal threats? Well, the first one that I see, and one that's most dangerous for our future, because we're not going to be producing heirs who really understand the values and the principles upon which our civilization faces, and that's our universities. Very significant problem when you look at universities today and you see professors who will not stand up for Western values, who have basically emasculated the curriculum of dead white males, that included, of course, is Shakespeare in that, where humanities departments are unable to even attract students to them because their curricula has become so progressive and so radical that it's almost unrecognizable from a curriculum about 10 years ago. And of course the famous speech codes. If you've been reading the Wall Street Journal lately, you'll see a lot about this. Speech codes which have squelched free speech. And there's no right to representation on most campuses. We also know about the famous case of the rape at the university, the alleged rape at the University of Virginia, which was made famous by Rolling Stone, which was proved to be a fake. But the students in that fraternity who were accused had no right of representation. They are basically star chambers which target young men just for being young men. And what about our media? The media is our source of information. The media provides us with our view on the world. But the media is not doing its job. Only a few months ago, Ben Bradley died. Everybody knows who Ben Bradley is? The former editor of the Washington Post and responsible, many say, for bringing down Richard Nixon. Ben Bradley was regarded as one of the great editors of modern times. But Ben Bradley used his position to demonize Republicans, to demonize conservatives, and made a specific point of bringing down Richard Nixon, and used the power of the Washington Post and coercing other papers to do the same. But the media today has lost its path. Only a few weeks ago, I interviewed Cheryl Atkinson. Does everybody know who she is? Cheryl Atkinson, a wonderful investigative reporter who couldn't get any of her reports on Benghazi, on the IRS scandal, on Fast and Furious. She couldn't get her CBS to pick them up. They are scotched, often at the last minute. She found that her phones were being tapped. Her computer would suddenly go on at night. Somebody was looking for information. So we have a media that has really become cowed by the administration, by this administration, is not doing its job and is not providing us with the information that we need in order to make informed decisions about the world in which we live. And what about radical environmentalism? Everywhere you look today, everything is green. But green has almost become a symbol of tyranny in many ways. Where we live in West Los Angeles, there's almost nothing you can do in a supermarket today. You have to buy bags. You have to recycle your plastics. You're constantly monitored. And the radical environmentalists, of course, and the councils, our local councils, have also adopted Agenda 21 principles. Have you had speakers here who have spoken about Agenda 21?
Yes.
So you know what Agenda 21 is. But it's a very significant problem. And finally, what about the idea of the nation state itself and our sovereignty and our rights to maintain and control our own sovereign borders? Of course, there's a huge immigration problem in this country, but it goes beyond that. More and more we see our government signing on to treaties which give away our sovereignty and our control of our own resources. And on the idea that supranational bodies, sovereign bodies like the United Nations, like the non-governmental organizations, should have some kind of control over what we do. A very significant problem when you give up your right to protect your citizens' life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's a direct challenge to the US Constitution. So these are the things that we have been focusing on. Every year we do a conference on one of these 5 areas. Once again, Islamicization of the West, academic freedom, media bias, radical environmentalism, and global governance. And we've been putting together, over the course of these 7 years, a puzzle, the pieces of which have been found in disparate places. And I'm going to show you now a very short video about what we have found. And this is an ongoing organic production. It is not finished because there are other pieces to add. But I want to give you a sense of where we feel Western civilization is going wrong. Sometimes I wonder,
In the 18th century, the Enlightenment, drawing upon the humanistic values of the Judeo-Christian tradition and the political legacy of the ancient Greeks and Romans, proposed a new way of thinking about human relations. Tolerance, openness to alternative viewpoints, the rights of citizens to participate in their own governance, and the guarantee of inalienable human rights all form the philosophical building blocks of what today we call Western civilization. But in every century since, the West has been forced to confront challenges it had never anticipated. In the 19th century, liberal democracy monopolies and industrial giants dominating economic life. In the 20th century, the democracies were forced to confront the rise of fascism and communism and were determined to destroy it. Now in this century, new challenges have arisen that are not so readily apparent. Understanding these threats leaves us with a puzzle, the pieces of which are fragmented, which we must try to gather together from disparate sources. Linked together, they possibly represent the greatest threats to Western democracy we've ever known. These are the pieces of the puzzle. The rise of Islam. Europe's submission to Islamic influence and its failure to adequately defend the values upon which its civilization was built. An excessive emphasis on multiculturalism, demoting Western civilization as just another form of human organization equal to any other. The collapse of academic freedom, closing the doors on frank discussion about Islam's intent. The failure of the media to accurately portray the nature of the Islamic threat. The second puzzle piece is the assault on Judeo-Christian values. The growing cloud of atheism and its control over cultural ideas and values. Moral and cultural relativism, obliterating the boundary between right and wrong. The shattering of the division between pornography and art. The ebbing of tolerance, humility, and privacy. The rebirth of anti-Semitism. The third piece of the puzzle is the attack on human exceptionalism. The United Nations Agenda 21, a program and movement designed to radically alter human consumption and land use. The animal rights movement and its anti-human agenda, elevating animal and plant life above that of human. The global governance movement, asserting that boundaries between nations be removed and that the elite, unelected bureaucracies should rule the world. Global warming hysteria, the unfounded notion that it is only humans that are at fault for unseasonable weather without reflection on alternative causes. These pieces form the basis of our concerns about the future of the West. We count on those with strong values and ideals to protect these values and to provide an enduring counterbalance to those who wish to destroy them.
So that is the puzzle that we are trying to address. The pieces of which we are finding in, as we say in this video, in very disparate places. And we have programs in Los Angeles which we're hoping to export to the Inland Empire. And I realize today why it's called the Inland Empire. Having driven here quite, yeah, I didn't know it was that far. I thought I'd reached the East Coast. But anyway, we have a number of different programs. We'll show those to you with a video that in just a minute. But we have a particular emphasis this year on the suppression of free speech in the Western media. That is a deep concern, and we're hoping to bring here a wonderful journalist named Melanie Phillips. Has anybody heard that name? A few people. Melanie Phillips has written a book which are really the foundational works of the American Freedom Alliance. She wrote a book called Londinistan, in which she shows how, this was even 8 years ago, London was progressively becoming under the control of Islamists. And it's a chilling book because everything she predicts in that book is coming true. And she also wrote a book which I couldn't stop reading because it seemed to resonate so deeply with me. And that's a book called The World Turned Upside Down. How the world now sees evil as good, sees right as wrong, wrong as right. How governments are completely hypocritical and reject their own values, the values and principles on which their own civilizations were founded. It's a very, very serious book and a very important one. And Melanie is a wonderful speaker, so I'm hoping that she'll be able to come. She's certainly coming to Los Angeles, but I'm hoping she'll be able to come and speak to you as well. And you'll be able to hear her and purchase her books and understand her perspective, which is a very well-researched perspective on the future of Western civilization. We're also hoping to participate in a very important conference here on the 21st and 22nd of February. We're putting together one of the panels on the media, which will be a precursor, which will be part of an event series they'll be holding with Melanie and a few others who will be here in that week. Some of the other programs that we're running, we run something called the Conference of the Air, and this is something you don't need to go to Los Angeles to participate in. It's because it's on the internet and it's free. We run conferences where we draw on opinions and voices from all over the world on particular subjects. On the 25th of January this year, we have a conference of the year titled The Liberation of Auschwitz and its impact on world history. And that will be, you can go to the American Freedom Alliance website and see that. Then there's also something we call Western World Radio, where we have regular interviews. For instance, we interviewed Cheryl Atkinson a while ago, and she was a very powerful interview subject. And you can listen to that anytime, anywhere, and the programs have worked out wonderfully. Other programs, we have a lecture series. This year we'll be commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, the first genocide of the 20th century that is basically forgotten. We'll be running a program titled The Centrality of the Family for the Future of Western Civilization. And in June, our major summer conference is going to be celebrating the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta, one of the foundational documents in the history of the world that is also basically forgotten today. And of course, our good friend John Hancock, who has written a book centered around that very idea, will be one of the speakers. So I very much encourage you to learn more about us. We also have 8 fellows who work with us. Some of them you might know. John is one of them. Michael Greer, I don't know if you know Michael, but she's also a fellow now. And John Sullivan, who's the producer, director of Obama 2016 and the recent Dinesh D'Souza movie, America, which I hope you've all seen. And we encourage you all to look into these programs and let's see if we can bring some of them here. Let's see if that'd be possible. Because I see here a very willing audience and a very open audience, ready to receive some of the information that we provide. I want to share with you a video about American Freedom Alliance. We are fortunate, as John said in his introduction, to be able to attract people from all over the world. Presidents, prime ministers, former prime ministers, former presidents, major political figures like John Bolton, John Woo, Brett Stevens from the Wall Street Journal. They've all participated in our programs in one way or another. So we're going to show you a little bit of a video about the American Freedom Alliance. I also want to bring to your attention that I have a little flyer passed out around here. Have you been able to distribute that yet? Yeah. Oh, okay. You can sign up for my daily commentary at the Intermediate Zone, which covers many of the themes of the American Freedom Alliance. You'll also find here our American Freedom Alliance website, as well as my address. So if you need to reach me, you can reach me at that address. But I think that the most important thing I want to say to you today is that the West is all in this together. You know, we can snicker and laugh at the problems in Europe, but you have to understand that those are our problems as well. They are part of us. And if they go down, if Europe goes down, America is alone, as Mark Stein has said. And that's not a very comfortable place to be. When we're faced with rogue regimes like Russia and Venezuela and Cuba and Iran on the brink of becoming a nuclear power, and China, who may very well wish to see the demise of the United States and of the freedoms it stands for. I certainly would like to see the demise of the West. So this is very important to know. We are in it together. Let's play the second video, if you don't mind. Sometimes I wonder whether my grandchildren will ever experience the freedoms I have known in my lifetime. There have never been any guarantees that everything will continue as it has been. Could it be possible that I am living through the sunset of Western civilization?
Responding to threats in these main areas.
On Tuesday, Redlands University revoked its invitation to Ayaan Hirsi Ali, an outspoken critic of Islam, to receive an honorary degree at its commencement next month. Well, Brandeis caved to pressure from Muslim groups like CARE. Care to continue?
I was born in Israel, and I know what it means to fight. I fought in 2 wars, and my entire family fought too. American Freedom Alliance made me realize the war is not over.
For many of the most important questions that I can't even have a discussion with any of my colleagues at the university, I have got to go to an American Freedom Alliance meeting or event. That's the only place that these really important issues can be discussed at all.
Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice has withdrawn as commencement speaker at Rutgers University in New Jersey following protests by faculty and students over her role in the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq.
As a survivor of academic censorship, I have deep respect for AFA's commitment to academic freedom and excellence.
The most trusted man in America in giving us unbiased, factual reports from the CBS EP News. Walter Cronkite, his entire adult life, believed that the United States should not exist as a political entity. Now, Walter Cronkite is entitled to his opinion, and I certainly wouldn't want to deprive him of that. But the idea that he is unbiased and impartially reporting the news, he would say, well, I try to keep my personal opinions out of it when I'm reading the news. Maybe that's true, but it determines what stories get covered in the first place.
This is the wildlands map of the United States. This was a conceptual map, and this is the corridor system that was based on the Biodiversity Treaty. This is the governor's map, so the implementation is actually happening.
When I was in 5th grade, California was known as the breadbasket of the world because of the water importation that we've done to the Central Valley, allowing America's produce to be farmed.
popular sovereignty, that we get our sovereignty not from a government, not from a monarch, but from the people. First of all is the term global governance itself. You don't hear them saying world government. You know, they figured out in the United States, at least, that was a no-no. That one wasn't working. So they don't talk about world government, or they talk about much more benign sounding global governance.
We have many enemies, and the most important weapon we have is knowledge. The AFA provides us with programs that inform and prepare us to defend our freedom.
The Cinema Gateway, a monthly film screening series which presents important issue-based films and includes discussions with the filmmakers. The Literary Cafe, a series of monthly meetings featuring discussions of important non-fiction books with their authors that address the threats we face.
For me, the Darwin debates in 2009 represented a high watermark for the American Freedom Alliance because we addressed a debate that no one else in the world has taken on.
What goes on here is that with the materialistic mindset that has grown up around science, scientists become, they're looking at nature, but they're not noticing their own intervention and what intelligent minds do. And when you step back and notice that minds have certain powers that material entities do not, you can begin to make inferences about the activity of mind in the past.
Freedom Alliance. This is an extremely useful organization, and I wish more and more people to come to the conferences, seminars that the Alliance is doing.
I'm Hugh Hewitt here to endorse the work of the American Freedom Alliance. The Alliance brings together the most visible public intellectuals, academics, and journalists to discuss the crucial issues of the day, whether it's the crisis in Europe right now, whether it's academic freedom in the United States and abroad, whether or not it's the Middle East and stability, the security of Israel, and the peace for that region that would endure. All of those issues are front and center of the American Freedom Alliance agenda.
AFA is a very important organization in helping to prevail the freedom of speech, also in Europe. As you might know, Europe is in the process of Islamization, and unfortunately there are no leaders. We have a lot of Chamberlains and very few Churchills or Reagans in Europe today, and the freedom of speech is under attack, not only in the Netherlands but also in many other European countries. So if we can combine forces with our friends in the United States, with the American Freedom Alliance, also fighting, it's in their name, for freedom, then we can not only combine forces but get stronger against the lack of freedom in the process of Islamization. It's very important and very proud to be here, and very thankful to all of us in Europe for organizations like the American Freedom Alliance.
I was raised in a socialist environment where dissent was not tolerated. I learned that free expression and free speech is one of the most valuable treasures of an open society. At AFA, I found a community where not only do I hear a variety of views, but learn from some of the greatest minds of our generation.
And tonight is not a time to look backward. But while I take inspiration from the past, like most Americans, I live for the future.
Another production in process. Greg said that I could take some questions, so if anybody would like to ask me any question at all about what is happening in the world today, I'd be happy to try to tackle it. All about the American Freedom Alliance.
Thank you for your patience. Hopefully Adrian will be back for the next meeting, and we'll have our regular sound system. If you want to ask a question, come right down here in front, and then we'll repeat the question for the audience with the microphones. We only have one microphone. Sam Long.
Very, very good question. Have we ever had any debates with the opposition? the truth is that we've often had debates. We encourage debates, but I'm always looking for debates with the opposition. But as you probably know, the opposition is very, very careful about engaging in debate with conservatives because they feel if they do, they will dignify and give credibility to the right. Unfortunately, what we've found is that in debates, and you saw the Darwin debates, for instance. The Darwin debates took place in 2009 on the 150th anniversary of the publication of Charles Darwin's The Origin of the Species. And the debate at that time was between evolutionary theorists and those who support intelligent design as a way of understanding the origins of life. And that's really what the debate was about. What are the origins of life? I was extremely disappointed in the evolutionary theorists. We gave them equal time. I was the moderator of that debate. I treated them with dignity and respect, but they treated their opposition with a very coarse, denunciatory attitude. They really didn't, and it sort of fit within the general attitude of the left, of liberals, to those of more conservative or on the right wing. And that is that if we give them a stage, then we dignify them and give them credibility, which is why you have so few liberals, really liberal conservative debates in this country these days. And it's a terrible indictment of the left, I believe, because I think that the conservatives are generally very open to challenge, they're open to questioning, they're open to investigation. That's not the case on the left, I'm disheartened to say. That's another interesting question. The New World Order and the participation of world leaders in some kind of cabal or conspiracy to run the world in a certain way. You know, we tend to stay away from what we consider conspiracy theories. We take everything seriously. We take any indication of a conspiracy or of some kind of cabal seriously. On the New World Order, though, we haven't really found the evidence that would warrant a conference or a broader discussion. And I feel that we have to be very careful about slipping into conspiratorial theories. I think that it can be very, very damaging to our side. So that's an area we have to tread very carefully on.
Prospect of reforming the existing cultural institutions or to preserve the values of what civilization, you need to form alternative educational teams and cultural organizations.
Very good question. You guys are great. The question is, are there alternatives to the institutions that we feel have become in some way corrupted? And we're talking, of course, about the academy, we're talking about the media, and we're talking about our entertainment vehicles. I think that in all three there are. We just had a conference in Los Angeles titled Failing Grades, the Crisis in Teaching on our university campuses. And we had a whole section devoted to the alternative, the online university, which is booming. More and more parents are seeing the cost of education rise and the quality of education decrease. And they're looking around and seeing, well, what alternatives are there? And they're finding it in online universities. Students are now gravitating towards it. They're finding both cheaper and less expensive education, and an education that also gives them the tools they need to move out into the grown-up world. So that's a very encouraging development. As far as the media is concerned, of course, we all know about the new media and about blogging and online newspapers. These have become very important sources of information and challenge the old media, which is being devastated. Los Angeles Times, do you get that out here?
We don't like it.
No, you don't read it. But papers like the Los Angeles Times, which are stalwart periodicals in the United States, are not able to sustain, economically able to sustain themselves. We're going to see more and more of these papers fold. Excuse the pun. And it's a tragedy, but also a sign of the times. The new media, the alternative media, is becoming a force for democracy, not only in the United States, but all around the world, and I applaud that. As for the entertainment industry, we do have some wonderful films now being produced. I'll tell you a great story. A movie that we just screened called The Biology of the Second Reich. That's the Wilhelm II, the First World War. The Biology of the Second Reich, which was a story about how Darwinism and the survival of the fittest had taken possession of the intellectuals and the academics of the generation before Hitler. So Hitler didn't invent anything new. And this is something I never knew. Anyway, this movie just won first place at the Hollywood Film Festival in Los Angeles. Remarkable. I encourage you to see it. It's only 15 minutes long. And it's a documentary. And you're seeing more and more conservatives put out terrific films. There's another film that I would love to bring here called The Arroyo, which is a feature-length film about a rancher who fights back against the illegal immigrants. Terrific story, a wonderful film, made for only $90,000. And we screen these films all the time. We screen the documentaries and we screen the films. I feel that there's a role, there's a place, there's a market for alternative entertainment in this country. And of course you have talk radio, which is providing an enormous vehicle, a counterweight to the liberal media. A wonderful thing it is, I might add. And Fox News, of course, is the most popular cable television station in the country, if not the world. So there are alternatives, and I'm pleased to say there are some very important developments there.